Hey guys, welcome to another video. This is Fantasy Friday, as I like to call it, the big day where you have to make up your mind before your fantasy transfers. I've been thinking about this for hours and hours. I still don't know what I'm going to do. Before we get into anything, you should see a super chat function now. So let me know if it's working. Otherwise, I did something wrong. But hopefully that's working for you guys. I really don't know how it works. But let me know if you see that. That's cool. And I have hey Jam, I have a really special guest for this fantasy week, double game week. Olivia was the perfect person to bring on because she literally does this for her job. This is what she does. She has all of the tips to make sure that we make the best transfers. Hopefully, let's see. It always backfires for me, I feel. But Olivia, thank you so much for joining me. How are you doing today?
Yeah, I'm good. I'm stressing because I've actually used my wild card this week, and I wish I hadn't. Now thinking about it, but I have. But I think there's only a few little thingies, going on in my head. I think I'm set mostly for game week 26. It's just my captain. I'm worried about my captain.
Yeah, and I'm worried about that as well, and that's something that we'll get into because during double game week, you should be using your triple captain, and we can get all into that. So first thing I want to talk about, I didn't know how to use the chips. I've used mine terribly. I used to at the start in October or November, I didn't use them properly. I still have my triple captain, but who are some of the main people, regardless of chips or anything, that you're looking to bring in for this double game week?
So I had Dominic Calvert-Lewin, and then he got injured. So I had him for that large chunk where he was playing really well, and I was debating taking him out. He went on a little bit of a dry spell, and then he came back. Obviously, only played 28 minutes against Liverpool, but that was enough time for him to get an assist. And I think having him and having that focal point up front just is so good for Everton. So he's one of the players that I would 100% be looking to get in as well. Got two really good fixtures as well. Southampton at home, who are obviously in awful form, and then West Brom away, both notoriously not very good defensively at the moment. So yeah, Dominic Calvert-Lewin, and also sticking with Everton, Luca Dean. Now, this is part of the reason I used my wild card, was because those fixtures are almost too good to ignore. And I think if Calvert-Lewin plays and Luca Dean, we know how good he is. We know how good he's been this season. And he's expensive. I think he's at 6.1 million. So trying to fit him in was something that I have tried to do, and I've managed to do it. But yeah, they were the two players, just purely because of the fixtures, I wanted to get in, and I was happy with most of my team. But I think Everton were the team I was looking at this week. But I still think it's a little bit of a risk because you just don't know what Everton are going to turn up. And I mean, I've got in my head the Everton that played against Liverpool is going to turn up, and the Everton that played against Chelsea is going to turn up. But it could be the Everton that turned up against Fulham. So you just don't know. But I think the two fixtures were enough to persuade me this week.
Yeah, that's a really good point, and that's kind of like what happens with fantasy. I feel like I just try to bring in these players and then they end up blanking. But it's good to hear you say that. I actually am between transferring in Ding and Ollie Watkins from Aston Villa, because Aston Villa also have a double game week. And something else that I kind of wanted to bring up that maybe you guys aren't thinking about yet, but we should start thinking about it, is that there's this blank game week in 29. So you want to try to make your transfers that have as many of those teams in them in the double game week, and that they also play in 29. So those teams, Fulham, Tottenham, Aston Villa, they all play. So we could potentially be looking at those players as well. So what do you think of somebody like Ollie Watkins? Because I'm not 100% sold. He has been scoring goals, but I just haven't pulled the trigger yet on him.
See, I've pulled the trigger. He's been in my team now for a solid amount of weeks. I actually captained him against Arsenal a few weeks ago when he scored and got all 3 bonus, and I was very happy about that because I was umming and ahhing about who to captain, and I just went with my gut. And I think that's what you have to do in FPL. There's no point thinking too much about it. If there's one player that you think's going to return, then you just go for it. And I did that with Ollie Watkins. Now, the only thing that puts me off about if I didn't have Ollie Watkins, the only thing that would put me off bringing him in is that Jack Grealish probably isn't going to be around for at least their first fixture of the game week. And We saw that against Leicester, albeit Leicester are a very good opposition and not the opposition that, Villa are going to come up against. Now, first game is Leeds, which to me is going to be a very open game. And that's why it's frustrating that Jack Grealish isn't playing, because Ollie Watkins and that sort of partnership that we've seen all season, Jack Grealish has been a big part, obviously, of Aston Villa season regardless, and in the goals that Ollie Watkins has scored. But purely because of his 2 fixtures being Sheffield United away as well, and the fact, like you mentioned, he has a fixture in game week 29 is the reason I'm keeping him. And I still think he's a good option. There hasn't been that many premium forwards this season. Kane's been on and off. When he's been in the side, he's been scoring. He hasn't. He's been injured. Then you look at Calvert-Lewin, on and off. And like Rashford's now a midfielder. Aubameyang's a midfielder. Werner's been on and off. So there hasn't been that many big forwards to pick from. So yeah, I've liked Ollie Watkins and I've liked Patrick Bamford, but of course, no double game week for them. But I'm keeping Patrick Bamford. He's just going on my bench for this game week.
Interesting. Okay, so last week I tripled up on Leeds players, which I was like, this is either going to pay off massively or be a total disaster, but go big or go home. So I have Dallas, I have Rafinha, and I have Patrick Bamford. So I'm kind of thinking like, you have the 3 as well.
So I did something stupid here. I basically was like, everyone's going to go for Rafinha, so why don't I go for Jack Harrison, who did absolutely nothing? I had Bamford and Dallas. I've had them all season pretty much. The only thing is with my wild card, I've transferred Dallas out now, but I will probably look to get him back in for 29. But I think for the moment, I can't justify having someone in my team that doesn't have a double game week, and I went Veltman as well and didn't want to get rid of Soufal, from West Ham. So yeah, but I did tripled up on Leeds, but maybe just the wrong midfielder.
Yeah, I had also like Harvey Barnes from weeks ago, and now he was my big differential, and now everybody is buying Harvey Barnes as well. Leicester don't have great fixtures though. They play against Arsenal and Burnley. Arsenal, their defense, like they haven't been playing amazing, but I do think they have a pretty good defense. Burnley are notoriously very difficult to break down. So do you think that he could be a good player to bring in? I think the player who's brought in the most this game week.
Yeah, he has over 600,000 people have bought in Harvey Barnes. And, if you were feeling really brave and you wanted a captain, a slightly differential, Harvey Barnes could be a good option, just because Arsenal look knackered. They played in the Europa League last night, and that would have taken it out of them as well. Leicester have got a very good record against Arsenal. They love playing Arsenal. Jamie Vardy loves playing against Arsenal. So he's a player that he did play in the Europa League defeat on Thursday, but loves a game against Arsenal. So wouldn't be surprised to see him start. And I have actually transferred Harvey Barnes in. Now, the only thing putting me off is Maddison. And that would also put me off owning Vardy as well, or bringing Vardy in, because Maddison's Maddison's all-round play has been absolutely brilliant this season, and even for everyone else, you can see the effect it's had on the likes of Harvey Barnes and players like that. But he is in great form, and I don't think you should look too much, as well as you do it form over fixtures as well as form. I think form is the most important thing, and he is in such good form, Harvey Barnes. He's been brilliant, like 13 points last time out, 12 points before that, and now I'm looking at his stats now, like. He's now in 16% of teams, but still, when you think about it, that's not actually that many. And I think people will be put off by his fixtures, but he managed 13 points against Burnley earlier in the season. So you never know. I think he's a pretty solid option, and he'll be one of those like midfield options, that people will change. People will have Thomas Souček, they'll have a Leeds midfielder. Maybe someone like Jesse Lingard could go in there as well. But as for the other full midfielders, people usually have Kane, Fernandes, Gundogan, and Son, or Kane, like one of those sort of, all of those 4, but maybe not all of them. But yeah, so the other one's really interesting. I think you could go quite a few different ways. But for me, yeah, I've gone Harvey Barnes. That could change because I'm on my wild card, but at the moment, I think I'm set.
Yeah, I think that it's like, we try to analyze so much who's playing, who's injured, how do they play with this team? And at the end of the day, it's like sometimes you just have to follow your gut and say, okay, well, they have been playing well. Hopefully they can continue to play well. So I think basically, to kind of sum it up slightly, is make sure to have those players who have a double game week in your team. It would be absolutely silly not to have as many players as you can in the double game week. So I think you've convinced me to bring in Ding, because I was between Ding and Ollie Watkins, and I also have Bamford. I have Kane and Calvert-Lewin as well. So I'm thinking that I just bring in Ding, and then I have one player without a double game week. So I don't know. I hope it goes well.
What I would say is, don't be afraid to take hits, because this season I never take hits in FPL. I never take -4s, -8s. This season I've done it so much, and I'm actually at the top of most of my leagues. So it just shows that if you're making those decisions and they're the right ones, and then they are the right decisions in the end, no matter if it's a -4. And this game week especially, I wish I hadn't used my wild card, because it doesn't. I've changed about 5 players, but actually it doesn't. But when you take -4s and -8s, you're already getting those 4 points back at least. So if you take a -4 to get someone in, you know you're getting those points back regardless. So if he goes on to return, then you're making a profit already. So I would, if you want to change more than your free transfers allow you to, this is the game week to take a hit, because you've got enough games to sort of like bring those points back up again.
Yeah, that's a really good point. So if you think that you can regain those 4 points that you're taking from bringing in those players, then absolutely do it, because you're going to get those points back in. So do you have any Chelsea players in your team? That's a question that we've been getting a lot. Which Chelsea players? I don't. I haven't had any for months.
Yeah, I had Timo Werner at the beginning, and it worked for when he got those 2 goals against Southampton, and I captained him and I was buzzing. But I had Mendy as well, but I just thought there's better options for that price. And Martinez just was getting all of the points all of the time. Even if he was conceding, he was making saves as well. So I had to get him. And I think if you haven't got Emiliano Martinez, he is a must-have. I think he's the highest scoring goalkeeper in the game. I don't. And I remember someone commenting being like, can't believe you don't have any Chelsea players in your team. And I'm like, but it's not about who I support. And don't get me wrong, previously, this is where I've gone wrong, because I've always had Chelsea players in my team, regardless of how they're playing. I had Eden Hazard in the 2015-16 season when we finished 10th and he did nothing, because I was like, oh no, he'll come good. And he obviously didn't. But that's where this season I tried to put my Chelsea I tried to just keep it aside from anything else and just do what I think's best for fantasy, because I'm very competitive. I don't like losing, and I'm in leagues with my mates from work that give me like stuff all the time. They're just constantly giving me ag about it, and my dad literally doesn't even call me to talk about how I am anymore. It's just about what I'm doing fantasy wise, because we're so close and I want to win all my leagues. So you've got to think purely with a fantasy head on and not with a Chelsea head on. If there was someone that stood out to me, like if Werner, goes on a run, because I was debating Werner after him getting a couple of assists and scoring. And of course, there's not that many premium forwards to choose from. So if there is a space, someone like Timo Werner might be an option, but they have to go on a run of games and justify that decision. And at the moment, I don't see it happening.
Yeah, I completely agree. I made the mistake at the beginning of this season. I had Pulisic, Havertz, and Werner in my team. Pulisic ended up being injured for a month or 2, and then Havertz and Werner weren't scoring. I remember I took Timo Werner out right before he scored a brace, and I was like,
oh yeah, that always happens.
Yeah, it literally always happens. But I think also specifically for this game week, Chelsea play Manchester United and Liverpool. So probably 2 of the hardest fixtures that you could possibly have. And in this double game week, there are just other players who have much more favorable fixtures. So I really wouldn't recommend bringing in any of these players. I don't know. And nobody's really performing that amazingly that I feel comfortable enough bringing them into my fantasy team. And we also don't know who's going to really be starting. We can take a guess, but it is getting rotated a bit as well. So another question for you. This one, I think I have a lot of people that said that they are nervous about tripling up on City players because of Pep Roulette. I personally have tripled up on City players because I think that they're just too good to give up. What do you think about this?
Yeah, I see the issue, and every time the lineups come out, I'm just like, why did I do it? But I think I've got Diaz, Stones, and Gundogan. Gundogan at the moment, I'm not dropping regardless. I'm not putting him on he's just absolutely brilliant. And for the price that he is, I can take him not playing in one game because he's not taking up a massive part of your budget. Whereas if it was someone like KDB, who's 11 million, if he doesn't play one of the games, then you're like, oh, well, he's one of my premium players that you expect to return. So I've got 2 City defenders. I think they haven't got a game in 29. And as it stands, I only have 2 defenders. I think I've only got 1 defender playing in 29 as it stands, but I'm going to try and set my team up like as well as I can for 29, which probably will mean transferring one of Stones or Diaz out. But at the moment, for this double game week, the fixtures as well, I know West Ham are playing well, but you'd bet on City. Their defence is so good at the moment that, you know, it's really difficult seeing them conceding. And then Gundogan basically plays as a false 9 and a number 10. So for 6 million, or I don't even think he's 6 million. Oh, he's 6.1 million. He's 6.1 million. I mean, he's gone up so much across the last 10 or 12 game weeks. Yeah, I think he's a must-have. People have gone with Raheem Sterling, and to be fair to Raheem Sterling, he has returned recently, but he also, you're not guaranteed he's going to start, whereas Gundogan's pretty nailed on to start. KDB, I'd say, is going to be starting because he got rested in their Champions League game. Gundogan, of course, played 90 minutes. But yeah, I think it's a tough one. But personally, for me, I'm tripling up on City. Stones didn't play in the Champions League, which makes me think he's going to start against West Ham. I think he'll go with his best centre-back pairing, which is Diaz and Stones. I think they're yet to concede a goal from open play when they've played, which is just mad when you think about it. I think Salah's penalty is the only one. Maybe the only one? I think so. I think it is the only one. So yeah, it's a tough decision, but I think the way they've been performing and the clean sheets they've got, it's almost, if you've got 3 City players, stick with 3 City players. And if you don't, I would be looking to triple up.
Yeah, I totally agree, because just like you've been saying, City haven't been conceding goals. They've been keeping a ton of clean sheets as well. So it's really free clean sheet points. I have Diaz and Cancelo. I had Stones, but I saw him getting benched for Laporte, so I wasn't like too sure about it. So I transferred him out for Cancelo, who I think is more of an attacking option.
This is the thing. Cancelo should get so many more points than he does. That's what would frustrate me with owning Cancelo, is that he plays as a right back, he plays as a right wing, he plays as a centre mid, he plays as a striker, he plays everywhere. But he should get so many more points. He should have scored against Arsenal. He gets into such good positions, and it would frustrate me. But I've picked Diaz, and it's come back to bite me a little bit because of Cancelo's like 20 points or whatever he got a few game weeks ago. But I think Cancelo's
I had him then, and I was like, oh, now I need to get him.
Yeah.
And so another talking point that I wanted to ask you about, I have Mohamed Salah on my team, but I have been thinking about transferring this man out for weeks and weeks and weeks. I haven't pulled the trigger because I don't feel like there's really any other premium options to go for, especially because KDB was out, and I'm very happy with Gundogan. So how do you feel about Mohamed Salah? Because Liverpool aren't playing well, and he's very, very expensive to have in your team, and he hasn't really been contributing that much. He hasn't been like getting that many returns. But then again, he is Salah, and perhaps he could turn it around. He's playing Sheffield and Chelsea in this game week. So how are you feeling about that? Do you have any advice for?
I've been umming and ahhing over Mohamed Salah, but I just cannot bring myself to take him out, because especially as he's on penalties, he's the sort of player that doesn't need to play well and could suddenly get returns, a bit like Bruno Fernandes, not to that extent. But I cannot, and especially because like over 40% of people have him. And so if you take him out, then you're allowing yourself to be hit even more when all of that 40%, nearly half the players in the game have Mohamed Salah in their team. So it's almost, you don't lose anything because everyone has him pretty much. He was, I was thinking, quite a good captaincy option for this game week. And I don't think many people will captain him, because Sheffield United away is a tough game, but I think a lot of their defence is out injured, their main back line. So that could be like a big thing for Mo Salah. And we know he loves a game against Chelsea. We know he loves a goal against Chelsea, as much as I hate it. And I don't know if I can bring myself to captain a player against Chelsea, but his record against Chelsea is pretty good. I'm pretty sure he scored in both games last season. I can't remember if he scored in the fixture earlier in the season, probably because he loves a goal against us. But I would bet on him getting returns in both games. Whether or not I can bring myself to do it, Chelsea fans or Liverpool fans it's sort of excluded. But if you're a neutral, then I think Mohamed Salah could be quite a good differential captaincy option, because I think most people are looking towards Bruno Fernandes, a Son or a Kane with really good fixtures, and or Dominic Calvert-Lewin. So yeah.
Interesting. So that kind of brings us perfectly to the next topic that I want to talk about, who to captain. And I think I'm going to use my triple captain this week. I have been waiting and waiting for it. I haven't found the right time. It's a double game week. I don't know when we're going to have this opportunity again. So I think I'm going to use my triple captain. So I wanted to go through a couple of the captaincy options. Who are you eyeing up? Who are you considering? What's the best fixtures for captain Benz this week?
I think it depends if you want to get him in, is Harry Kane. And if you want to make the room for Harry Kane, then him or Son would be a really good captaincy option. The only thing, that's purely because of their fixtures. Now, I think they play, let me have a look. They play Burnley at home and then Fulham away. They struggled against Fulham in the reverse fixture, only drew 1-1. This is a Spurs side that you're not quite sure which Spurs you're going to get. Are you going to get the free scoring Spurs where Son and Kane are just unplayable? Or are you going to get the Spurs, they're on a pretty bad run at the moment. Are you going to get a Spurs that's slightly more reserved and you don't get that partnership from Harry Kane and Son? So that is a big... I've got Son. He's one of those players that I just don't take out my team, and he's only scored 1 in 8. And I just don't know what Spurs is going to turn up. So he's not in my captaincy options, but I can understand why other people would want to captain Kane, obviously on penalties, or Son. Gundogan as well, I think, is a pretty decent shout. I mean, I think now if you're talking about using chips, bench boost or triple captain would be perfect to use in this game week, because we don't know if there will be a bigger game week than this one. Some teams have got some really good fixtures. Man City, of course, have another double game week next week as well, next game week. But, when Champions League comes back into it, Pep's roulette just goes even more crazy. And, when they get into the latter stages, that's when you really have got no idea who he's going to pick. So like the players like Phil Foden and stuff are really difficult to try and get in because you just don't know. I think Gundogan's pretty nailed on to at least start the first game. I don't think I'm going to captain him either. My head, as soon as I saw the fixture, said Dominic Calvert-Lewin. Now, I've been really good at going with my gut this season, and I just do it. And one of my friends was like, "Oh, but he's only just come back from injury." But they don't play until Monday. They play again on Thursday. So I think if he's fit, and I'm assuming he'll play in that first game against Southampton. I'm swaying towards Dominic Calvert-Lewin, but then not the most obvious choice, but Bruno Fernandes again. I think he blanked against Palace and Chelsea. He definitely blanked against Chelsea, of course, in that 0-0. But he loves an away game. He returned in 8 of his 11 or 12 away games this season. He's on a brilliant run at the moment, scored in 4 consecutive games. And now he is a player that does not have to play well to get returns. Man United could be playing awfully, and somehow he'll come out with a goal and an assist and like 15 points. So I think he's a really solid option as well. My gut said Dominic Calvert-Lewin, but I think this is going to be a 10:59 job tomorrow morning for me to decide.
I really don't know. I currently have Gundogan triple captain right now because I was going with the last double game week, and I was like, I'm gonna hold off. And I did captain him, but I didn't triple captain him, and he ended up returning like 19 points.
Stupid amount of points,
So I personally think I'm gonna just stick with my gut and go for Gundogan. That City are playing extremely well, but like you said, there are a lot of really good captaincy options. With Fernandes, I get a little bit worried that he's playing against Chelsea. I think that Chelsea have pretty good, and I think that we're going to try to make it difficult for Manchester United. But I like you said, like being a Chelsea fan, I don't want to captain him just because I don't want him to Chelsea, which maybe I need to take off my Chelsea hat a little bit.
That's the one thing, like I say, I don't mind putting other players in my team, but I don't think I've ever captained someone against Chelsea, and I still don't think I will. I think as much as Bruno is capable of returning in every game that he plays in, I think, but it's hard because then I don't like. Do you know what I mean? I want to be cheering on my captain. Do you know what I mean? I want to be cheering on my captain to get points. And when they play against your own team, I don't want to be doing that. So I'm probably going to stay away from Bruno. I think I'm set on Dominic Calvert-Lewin, but Bruno is. And Gundogan's a great shout as well. So I think there's just going to be loads of different captains this week. I think that's what's so exciting. There's going to be triple captains play. There's going to be bench boost plays. And there's going to be so many different captains. So I think it's going to be a really interesting game week.
I know. I wish that I used my bench boost like so randomly because I was just... oh, like, oh, I have this person bench. Maybe their score, so I'll just use it. I wish I had used it for like a double game week where I'm bench players like a Patrick Bamford who could potentially go on to score, and the Dallas as well. So I don't know. Next year, guys, make sure that you hold on to your chips for these double game weeks, because they are so important. If you guys have any questions, make sure to get them in before we end. I do have a question that Jem had left on Twitter. He said, who do you think is going to have the most amount of points, any position, at the end of FPL this year?
I think it's got to be Bruno Fernandes. He's currently got 26 more points than any other player, and he is key for that Man United team. When they do well, more often than not, it comes through him. He's on penalties as well. And like I said earlier, he's just one of those players that doesn't have to play well, and he just seems to get points. He's the fantasy manager's dream. He's Mr. Consistent. I think the longest he's gone without returning is 2 consecutive games, and that is it. So I think we got a little glimpse of it at the back end of last season, what he was going to do when he got over 100 points in like 4 months. He'll definitely be the first to hit 200 points. So I think come the end of the season it'll be Bruno.
I know I'm like kicking myself because I had taken a while to put him in my team because I was like, I can't have Bruno.
I think so many people do that.
I just can't do it. And then eventually I caved in, but I'm like, oh, how many points I could have had. So
I'll bite the bullet sometimes and just go for it.
So I don't see any more questions coming in. I think that this has been super helpful for me. I know the transfer that I'm going to make. I feel more confident after speaking to you about it, so I really appreciate that. I hope that it pays off. We're getting a couple of more questions now. We kind of talked about this. Is it worth possibly taking a couple free hits to replace the likes? And yes, definitely, I think.
Like 100%. Like, I've taken hits all season and they've luckily been the right decisions. But 100% in this double game week, if you're going to play your bench boost, you want as many. I wouldn't say take like a 16-point hit, but if you're looking at a 4 and an 8 and possibly even a 12, you could maybe justify 12. You're getting in 3 players that are going to be on your bench that have good double game weeks. Then 100%. But then also you've got to think about, once you've done that, you might be looking to get Dallas back in because they're one of 8 teams that have a game in game week 29, and you're going to want as many players as possible. But also for game week 29, I'm not like, if you had your free hit, I don't know whether I'd use it for that because the games don't stand out to me. I don't want to triple up on, Brighton. I don't want to triple up on Fulham. I don't want to get loads of Newcastle players in my team. Like, I might get a couple of Arsenal players, like maybe Saka, but probably that's it. And I think there will be another double game week coming up, for the likes of the teams that are in the FA Cup. So that could be Chelsea if they get through, could be Man City, could be Man United. So that's definitely also worth thinking about. But I'd say for the game week 29, you want to get build up if you can. And these next few game weeks, you've got 4 game weeks, 3 game weeks to build up your team for that game week. But then you've got to think beyond that as well. So if you wanted to use a free hit for that, then you could do. But that doesn't necessarily mean that every player you put in is going to return, because you just don't know what to expect with the teams that are playing. There's no Chelsea, there's no Man United, there's no Liverpool, there's no Everton, there's no Man City. So it's going to be tough. But yeah, I'd say definitely to that question, if you're looking to get Dallas out to a double game week in, then probably look to get him back in a few weeks' time.
That's my issue, because I already used my free hit like stupidly, and I don't have that many players from the teams playing in game week 29, and I'm also not really convinced by any of the teams. I have a couple of Leeds players, but I also don't want to transfer in random players and then be stuck with them. So it's definitely, I think that's going to be a pretty bum week for me.
Yeah, I think it will be for me. So I'm worried about this week, so I'm not using any chips. So I feel like I've used my wild card, which obviously then means I can't use my bench boost, which I've used already, but couldn't use my can't use my triple captain. And I think this could be the week where everyone's triple captains pay off. So I'm just like, please no.
I hope so for my sake. So yeah, good game weeks. So Olivia, I don't want to keep you too long. I know you're super busy. It was so nice to do this while she's like in between. Like you're going to be interviewing Thomas Tuchel right after this. So kind of honored.
I am indeed. I'm going to ask him. Yeah, I like putting on Twitter what you guys want to ask. But yeah, I've got a few questions. I don't know how many. This is the thing with press conferences; you just never know how many questions you're going to get in and when you're going to ask them. But yeah, I've got a few down, and some people put on Twitter some good ones. So I'll be speaking to him at 1:30.
That's insane. So make sure to tune in for that so you can hear Liv speak to Thomas Tuchel. I would be so nervous and not know what to do. So guys, thank you so much for watching this video, for tuning in. I think that it was so extremely useful and helpful. Olivia, you have so much knowledge about Fantasy Premier League. Honestly,
I should do. It's I get paid to talk about it. So if I didn't, I'd be worried. But that's not to say my game week 26 is going to go well, because I've got a bad feeling about this game.
No, you're sending good vibes. So thank you so much for joining me. I'm sure everybody knows where to find you, of course, but if not, let them know where they can find you.
Yeah, I don't have a YouTube channel or anything like that. But yeah, my Twitter is just at Olivia Buzaglo, and it's mainly Chelsea, like Ellie, and Chelsea chat and FPL chat and stuff like that. So yeah, if you fancy it, come with me.
Cool. So I'll make sure to put it in. I don't think I've put it in the description yet. So I'll make sure to put Olivia's Twitter in the description. And yeah, guys, thank you so much for joining. Hope it was useful. And hopefully we can all get really good game weeks from this double game week. And until next time, I'm out.